Today on Nerdalific, we're going to look at how to set up your Excel workbook to start creating your budgeting plan. Naming your budgeting worksheet. I recommend naming your workbook the year and the word budget. So for example, 2021 budget. At the beginning of every new year, it's best that you save a copy of that year's budget and then save a new version of the workbook and rename it so that the title is the current year. That way, you have some historical data to look back at and compare to your current budget. After you've named your workbook, then you need to create two separate worksheets. The very first one we're going to call Budget. The second worksheet we're going to call Planning. You can title this page if you wish. Let's make this title look a little bit bigger and a little bit better. We can always change it later on. Leave a few spaces. I suggest starting at like row 6. I'll explain this later. You're going to need to use multiple columns for this. The very first column that we're going to start in cell A6 is called Expense. After your expense column, you're going to need one separate column for each type of income. I recommend going up one extra row here, and we'll call it Income 1, Income 2, and Income 3. This is just an example, and of course you might only have one income or you might have 5 incomes. Now below here in row 6, below each income, you're going to put the total amount of the income. So we're just going to ballpark it here. Let's make sure we change our format to these amounts as currency. I don't think we really need these decimal places though, so let's get rid of these decimal places. And we can fancy this up later, but for now I'm just going to change these to bold so that we know that this is going to be the title row. Let's also add some borders. Drop down all borders, and we'll do all borders for here. Now, I don't know how many expenses we're going to be listing because every person's or every household's financial situation is going to be completely different. So to start, we'll just go up to 20. Now at row 3, we are going to add the word remaining. Let's just double click between columns A and B to automatically resize that column. Now we're probably going to change this column width as we go, depending on the length of the type of expense. Let's add a formula here. We want to know, as we enter data into this chart, how much money we will have remaining on each one of these incomes. We're going to start with equals. Now click on the cell of the first income. It's handy to have this formula in the exact same column as the income that we're looking at in the formula. Minus the sum of, now for now we're just going to select the range of columns below up to row 20. We can change this later. Close brackets and enter. Obviously, we have no money segregated or put aside out of this paycheck, and therefore we have the full amount remaining. Now, because we didn't use cell referencing in this formula, we can simply drag it over to the right, and it will automatically refer to the income in the next column. Don't forget to save your workbook frequently. We don't want to lose what we're doing. Let's move on to the planning workbook. I'm just going to copy this title, go over to the planning, and paste it into row 1. But I'm going to change this to planning. Now our title at the top of this sheet is going to be the exact same format as the one on the budget sheet. Of course, you can choose whatever formatting you like. You can make it fancy if that's what you want to do, and you don't have to use blue. Whatever works for you. Now let's set up all of our column headings. I like leaving a couple of rows between my title and then the actual data section. The reason for this is, well, it's visually appealing, and also that's just how I like it. So if you want to follow me and do the same thing, go right ahead. And if not, then you're welcome to start adding your titles into row 2. However, for this tutorial, I am going to enter mine in row 4. You need to enter the following titles: expense, category, amount, frequency, total, annual, weekly, bi-weekly, and monthly. I'll explain this more in the next video. We're just currently setting up the worksheet so that once we have all of our data gathered, it's easier to start typing in the information. Now let's go ahead and fancy up these titles a little bit. Bold, center. If you watched any of the previous videos, then you already know how to do this, but just to recap, if you highlight all of these columns and double click on any one of these column lines that are between the column names, for example, E and F, if you double click, it will automatically adjust to the width of the words in row 4. However, I prefer to see the same width on all of the columns if at all possible. So let's just click on this and see how wide this is. 11.43. Let's set all of our column widths to the same amount. Column width 43. Okay. Again, we don't know exactly how many rows we need, so let's just add in some borders to make it look a little bit more pleasant when we start entering the data. We could also start adding in a little bit of color. Of course, the color and making things look pretty isn't exactly necessary, but if you're going to be looking at this every once in a while, you're going to want it to look at least somewhat appealing. Don't forget to hit save on your workbook. So that's all we need to do to really get the basic setup going for your budget. In the next video, we're going to dive a little deeper and start entering the data into the worksheet. So thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next video.